Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. In this video series, we're going to be looking at my top 51 games of all time, and this specific video is going to cover games 51 to 41. Now, if you want to get the preamble, make sure you check out the precursor video that tells you what I was looking for, what this video is going to entail, and basically what my criteria is and what to look for in this video itself. One thing I did forget to mention though is that once I'm done covering my top 51 games of all time, I'm actually going to show you my sons, both of them, they have their own list of top 11 games they wanted to present. Now, it's actually a top 10 list. Their 11th game is the game that they're most interested in playing a lot more of, so they haven't played enough to get a good opinion of it, but it's definitely interesting because they both picked the same number 11 game, which I kind of smiled about. And it's kind of cool to check out their game list and kind of compare it to my game list and see if and how their games are influencing the games I also enjoy. Also, I'm not going to sit here and just ramble on about different board games. I'm going to put them out on the table just so you can see what these games look like, see how cool they are. But that's enough of that. Let's move on to number 51. Number 51 on the list is Roll Through the Ages, the Iron Age. Now, Roll Through the Ages, the Iron Age is an evolution, or call it a second edition, whatever you want to call it. It's basically a more advanced version of Roll Through the Ages, the Bronze Age, which is basically a dice rolling game where players were trying to roll dice to gain resources to build up their empire, and everything was controlled by a very nice empire sheet. And I went ahead and laminated mine because I played this game so darn much. I was basically tearing through those tablets too darn fast. So I laminated my sheets so we can all use erasable markers, and makes the gameplay a heck of a lot better. But basically what this game was, the whole idea of the game was, is you were rolling these dice to get resources to try to build up your empire. Now you use these resources to do things like add extra ports, add extra provinces, and the cool thing is, were provinces, you had to feed your provinces, but the more provinces you had, the more dice you had, but the more you had to feed them. So you had to be very careful about not broadening your empire far too much, or far too fast, or faster than you can produce food. Otherwise all your people would starve and you'd run out of resources and you'd be in a heck of a lot of trouble. But the cool thing is, this game managed to give you the feel of a civilization building game built into a Yahtzee mechanic style game where you're simply just trying to roll dice and get results. But those results worked on these little pegboards that gave you all these resources to help build up the empire and get your resource engine building going. And it felt like you're playing an empire game. Oh yeah, of course, you're playing a dice game here, but it felt like you're playing an empire building game because you had these really cool pegboards that gave you these resources for everything you can accumulate, and basically it's basically a race between all the players playing the game. Plays from 2 to 4 players. It had some solo rules so you can play it yourself and try to get a better score. If I remember correctly, I think you were playing for 8 rounds or 12 rounds. Don't quote me. I'm not going to pull out the rule book to double check this because this is just a quick overview. But the idea was to get resources faster than any other player, and the game would come to an end based on however many players you were having. As soon as somebody managed to get a certain amount of accomplishments, then everybody would add up the score. Whoever had the best empire was the winner of the game. Now, what the Iron Age did to evolve the Bronze Age game is it added in the Fate die, and the Fate die was absolutely awesome. It added a little more variety and made it feel like a civilization game. If you ever played any of the PC civilization games, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. You were all sitting there fat, dumb, and happy, building up your empire, watching your empire building up, and then suddenly you got the warning, barbarians are attacking, and you said, oh no, I didn't protect my walls, or I didn't protect my cities, and your whole plan just can go to rot there just very quickly. And of course, that's not that bad in this game. I mean, you're still dealing with the fickleness of fate, of dice. It wasn't that bad, but you had the feeling of an awesome civilization with some really awesome components. Because I don't know if you can tell this in the video, but solid wooden components. This is heavy duty, really, really cool. And instead of just a boring old standard cubes where we're counting out 100 cubes every single turn, you had this really cool pegboard and these dice, and this made this an awesome game that you can play while traveling, because you don't have to worry about cubes flying halfway across the car if you took a corner too sharp, because these pegboards kept everything very nicely. You can roll the dice on the top of the box, and the game came with the Mediterranean expansion, which did a fantastic thing. Something that kind of I grew tired of with the Bronze Age. Not to say I should ever grew tired with that game, because I remember when I had that game on my iPhone, back in the days when I had an iPhone on the 3G, that's when I stopped being an Apple user, but I played hundreds of times playing that application with the Bronze Age. And what this game did to fix it for me to evolve the Bronze Age was to throw in the Fate die and the Mediterranean expansion, which gave you a purpose for all of your workers once you reach a certain part of the game. I think this is a fantastic game. It is definitely worthy of being on my top 51 games list of all time, and it's a game I really, really enjoy. Number 50 is Nefarious, a game from Donald X. Vaccarino, and no spoilers here. Okay, it's a spoiler. It's the only game from the designer on my entire list, which I'm sure is going to shock a lot of people, especially a lot of Dominion players, and a lot of people who like Kingdom Builder. Now, be honest here, Kingdom Builder actually came very close to making it to my list. Dominion, it didn't, sorry. Not a big Dominion player. Dominion's a pretty darn well designed game, but not a great game to keep me interested. But Nefarious is the exact opposite, because Nefarious, unlike Dominion, is a game that is dripping with theme. Now, this is a game for 2 to 6 players, where the players are mad scientists trying to do like Marvin the Martian, blow up the planet. Sorry, that's my best Marvin the Martian impersonation. Make fun of me later. Anyways, the idea of the game is the players are trying to work really fast and very quickly to build all these inventions, and these inventions are going to be worth amounts of victory points. And the cool thing about the game is all the players have 4 cards that they're going to have in their hand. These are the 4 actions available in the game. You have the action of espionage, the action of invention, the action of researching, and the action of working. Well, all the players are going to place their cards face down. We're all going to reveal and we're going to figure out who's doing which actions, and all these different actions we can actually feed off of each other. Because if players pick actions and they have to be sitting very close to you, you're going to gain benefits of them doing those actions. Which seems like, if you look at the surface of the game, it seems like a pretty simple game. And probably why would it be on a top 51 games of all time list? Well, here is the reason why. Okay, the theme is kind of cute, but the game has these twists. Now, you look at this large stack of twist cards, and there are a lot of these twist cards. Every single time you play the game, you're going to pick 2 of these twist cards, and they're called twist cards because they change the way the game plays. It changes the rules of the game. So you have this basic game with this cute little theme, worker placement, people fighting to get all these victory points for these cute little funny kind of humorous inventions. I mean, just to go over some of these inventions, you got a volcano trigger, which isn't that funny, but if you look at the cloning machine, or you look at the deadly static shocker, you look at the invisibility ray, there's lots of cute little artwork on it. But the real fun and the real awesomeness of the game are these twist cards. These twist cards guarantee that you are never going to play Nefarious the same way twice. You play 2 of these twist cards, it changes up the rules, it changes up the way people score points, it changes up the way people start with resources. These twist cards break the rules, break the way the game plays, but they don't actually break the game. So that is why Nefarious is number 50 on my list. Simple game on the surface with all these twist cards, making sure that this 2 to 6 player game plays differently every single time. Number 49 is Warhammer Quest Silver Tower. Now, this is a game I knew was going to be on my top 50 board games of all time. Now, I grew up on RPGs. I've been playing RPGs since I was knee-high to a knee. Sorry, this is my attempt at humor tonight. Apparently, I didn't get enough sleep last night. Anyways, I've been playing RPGs all my life, so I have always been looking for the perfect crossbreed between a board game and the RPG. And Warhammer Quest Silver Tower has come the closest for me, in my opinion, at least in a cooperative dungeon crawling style game. Because this game has taken your typical dungeon crawler, we've all seen a lot of these mechanics before, and they've thrown in this adventure book, which is completely random. And I'm not going to flip around and show it to you because I don't want to ruin any of the spoilers, but just suffice it to say that this book right here is full of random encounters, probably the wrong term to use here, but they're full of narrative encounters, that's probably the best term to use, that are going to add a lot of variety and a lot of fun to the game and tons of theme as the players are trying to get through 8 quests. Now, if you know what I'm saying here, please no spoilers in the comments below. I know some of you are saying, wait a minute, but no spoilers here. But this is a game where you're going through 8 quests where the players are trying to hunt down and destroy the summoner here who's trying to take over the world. You know, it's a typical thing that the bad guys like to do. I guess they've all been taking lessons from Marvin the Martian. Anyways, the game is really fantastic. The game goes back through all of the Warhammer fantasy catalog, which is now called the Age of Sigmar, brings in tons of heroes, tons of expansion, tons of different ways to play the game, and the game actually has some really cool, unique mechanics of the game. Okay, it's a cooperative game. We've all seen those before, and you can go ahead and pick up Descent, which is a cooperative game, but this game has taken a game where instead of a game where you are basically forced to play a storyline the way the designers have meant for you to play the game adds a lot of randomness and a lot of variety, ensuring that this is one game that you can play multiple times through. And even though you have the same 8 scenarios, they're not going to turn out the same way. You're not going to have the same encounters. You're definitely not even going to have the same storyline. Okay, the overarching storyline is going to be the same, but the actual little mini adventures are all going to be different. Thanks to the way these rooms come out, how these rooms are interacting, what kind of encounters you're going to have with the rooms, and the ever so awesome fate mechanic where the players are going to roll the fate dice at the start of every single player's turn, and hopefully the fickleness of fate is not going to make their lives difficult as fate intervenes. Now the game is done very well. Like I said, you can play this game anywhere from 2 to 4 players, and it's from 2 to 4 players, each controlling as many heroes as they want. So if you want to play a 2-player game, every person can just play one adventurer. You're not required for people to control a total party of 4. And matter of fact, there's different heroes, different adventurers, different good guys, different bad guys that you throw in the game from the wide, wide world of the Age of Sigmar, adding tons of variety, tons of replay, and tons of fun to this cooperative dungeon crawler. Number 48 is Fury of Dracula. Now we have the Fantasy Flight version of the game here, which is unfortunately no longer being printed, thanks to the deal between Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop being terminated. But the good news here is the way Games Workshop is bringing back all their properties, and the fact that they've even announced a lot of the properties that were with Fantasy Flight Games are coming out with other companies. I mean, we've already seen word that their new RPG based on the Fantasy Warhammer Roleplay, I almost forgot what it's called, sorry about that, but the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, they've already proven that's going to come out with another company. So I wouldn't be too concerned at this point, because I'm willing to bet that Fury of Dracula is a game that's going to come back out on the market under the Games Workshop banner. Now, if you want the game, go pick it up now. I would definitely recommend you do this, because this is a fantastic game. Fury of Dracula is a hidden movement game where one player controls old Dracula, and their objective is just to concede destruction and chaos across the land. And if they can survive long enough in this game of cat and mouse, where sometimes Dracula is the cat, sometimes Dracula is the mouse, but if they can survive long enough, they ensure that they will win the game. While the investigators are going out there and traveling, trying to locate Dracula, find him, and put a stake right through his heart and ending his evil ways. The really cool thing about this game is that nobody knows exactly where Dracula is at, because on the Dracula player's turn, he's going to place a card down where that shows his location, and then the players are going to go around and investigate, checking out locations, following the roads, following the railroads, following these different routes, trying to find out where Dracula is. But if they happen to find out where he is and go to that location, they have an encounter with Dracula. And I'll tell you one thing, Dracula is not an easy customer to deal with. So you're going to need to bring your friends along, you're going to need lots of help, and you're going to need to find ways to defeat Dracula as he spreads his evil and his influence across the land. Now this game is done very, very well, and it forces the players to make decisions that are not always good, because the game goes through a day cycle and a night cycle. During the day cycle, the players are free to do any of the actions they want to do, such as grabbing cards that are going to give them benefits and making their life much better. But at night, they have to draw cards from the bottom of the deck if they want to take these actions. Sometimes these cards can be good, but oftentimes they're going to be bad and give more power to Dracula, adding more cards into his hand, adding more devious ways that he can make the hero's life much, much more difficult. Now the game does play for 2 to 5 players, and unfortunately this is one of those games that does require a set amount of players. So it doesn't matter how many players you're playing the game, you still need to have all 4 of the heroes, and one person does have to control Dracula. So there's kind of one of the negatives of the game, and it does mean as a 4-player game, it does feel like a little bit of an odd duck, because you're going to have the heroes controlled by the 3 of the players, and then basically the 4th player is probably going to be Mina, depending on how you play, because the players do have to play in a certain player order. But basically the players as a group are going to have to control Mina Harker, but they're going to go through their adventures and try to track down Dracula before the end of 3 weeks. Because if the game gets to the end of the 3 weeks, thanks to this little track here, things are going to become nigh impossible for our heroes to win as they try to track down Dracula and again put that stake right through his heart. Number 47 is Lord of the Rings from Reiner Knizia. This is a 2 to 5 player cooperative game that reenacts the grand journey of Frodo Baggins and his compatriots as they try to take the One Ring and destroy it in Mount Doom before the Eye of Sauron catches up to our heroic party and slaughters the ring bearer, defeating our heroes and ruining the day. Now, this is a cooperative game that was one of the first games that got me back into the board gaming hobby, at least the designer hobby. This is probably one of the first of the dozen or so games I purchased when I got back in the game, and I am extremely happy I did so. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the Friends and Foes expansion, which is supposed to make this game even better, but this is still a really cool game for 2 to 5 players. See, this game comes with multiple boards, and all these boards are double-sided, and they represent various different grand encounters our heroes encountered on their journey to take the One Ring and destroy it in Mount Doom. But the cool thing about this game is how the players were trying to use things such as card play and various different actions to defeat the odds, hedge their bets, while they're flipping over these tiles that will increase their journey of friendship, increase their journey as they travel all over, maybe have some encounters where they go to battle, all while they're trying to avoid these horrible events, making their lives much more difficult. And of course, as the Eye of Sauron slowly attracts the ring bearer, because if the Eye of Sauron ever meets up with the ring bearer, our heroes have lost and they have met their, pardon their pun, ultimate doom. Now, this game is absolutely fantastic from Reiner Knizia. I think this is his best design, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to argue with me, but the amount of theme with this mechanics, now again, this game is like a lot of his games, it's very much a mathematical exercise as you're mathing out the results and trying to figure everything out, hedging your bets and trying to figure out what you can do. But for some reason, this game just clicks with me so well. He has managed to take the theme of the Lord of the Rings, the grand journey, and the difficulty, and the arduous decisions that all the players must constantly make as they're playing their game as they try to get the One Ring, toss it in Mount Doom, and win the game. Lord of the Rings is number 47 on my list because this is an absolutely fantastic cooperative game for 2 to 5 players. Number 46 is Takenoko. Now, this is a gateway game, and I'm not a big fan of the term gateway game because it seems like it's a negative whenever you say gateway game. But Takenoko is a fantastic game for 2 to 4 players. It plays with multiple age ranges, multiple skill abilities, and this is one of those games that you can take a non-gamer, sit them down at the table, give them a quick overview of the game, and they're going to understand how to play the game. And thanks to this super cute little panda, they're going to have a heck of a lot of fun doing it. So in the game of Takenoko, players are trying to score victory points. Yeah, we've all tried to do that before, but the way they're trying to score these victory points is in various different categories, such as feeding the panda bamboo shoots can get you a certain amount of victory points based on the cards you have in your hand. You can get victory points by having the gardener build the garden in certain kind of ways to impress the emperor, and that's going to also give you victory points. Or you can also improve the garden by expanding it out in various different ways and having different sections of the garden match certain colors, all in your effort to impress the Grand Emperor. Whoever does the best job impressing the Grand Emperor is going to get the most points and also win the game. Now, this game, even though it has a cute exterior, it has fantastic components and it's super easy to teach, but it's one of those games that even seasoned gamers can have tons of fun with because there's lots of strategy in the game, and it even has many ways for people who do not play a lot of board games. It has nice ways for them to have nice simple mechanics that they don't have tons of options on their turn. And I'm not saying it limits your options because you don't have lots of different decisions to make, but every one of your decisions matters. You're not looking at this huge decision tree where you're trying to choose among 20 different things. You're trying to choose among 3 different things, but every one of those decisions can matter to your score and help you win this game of Takenoko. Number 45 is Ultimate Warriors, spelled with a Z, which is kind of an unfortunate thing because we've seen in the hobby that spelling things really strange or very oddly can kind of tend to lead to your board game not being as popular as it really should be. I can probably give you a couple examples of that, but I'm not going to bore you to tears here with my made-up hypothesis and theory that I really can't prove anyways. But Ultimate Warriors is a game for up to 8 players, and this is a really fun game. This is a game that basically dethroned King of Tokyo for me as my go-to game that I bring out for people who are not huge board gamers And I want to bring them into the hobby and show them how much fun this hobby can be with up to 8 players in a quick playing game that is not hard to teach, but very hard to master and has lots of deep strategies. And just the one thing that some people do like when they're not great at strategy games, a little bit of dice rolling to help make up for the fact that they're not as adept at these strategy games, so it's a little bit of a balancing factor. Now in Ultimate Warriors, every player happens to be one of the Ultimate Warriors, and your objective is to be the most Ultimate Warrior at the end of the 7th round, or just be the last Ultimate Warrior left standing in the arena. And the cool thing about this is a game box that you actually flip over, and instead of having a game board, you make the game box be the arena for these Ultimate Warriors. And this game has some really cool mechanics built into it that are some really smart decisions for the game. See, every single one of these Ultimate Warriors has a certain amount of hit points and a certain amount of speed. The bigger guys have more hit points, but they're a lot slower. The smaller guys don't have as many hit points, but they're a heck of a lot faster. And the way this game works is every one of our heroes has a certain amount of hit points based on the hero, and you're basically, as you lose these hit points, you're going to hand these hit points over to the person who hit you and did damage for you, and they're going to gain those hit points as victory point markers. Now the cool thing about the game is it's got built-in mechanics that prevent anybody from ganging up on one certain Ultimate Warrior, because you want to spread the damage, because the first time you're hit you're worth 3 victory points, but each additional time you're hit you're only worth a single victory point, so people want to spread out the misery. Also, additionally, if somebody is knocked out of the combat too soon in the battle, whoever knocks them out is going to have a whole bunch of boulders thrown at them, which is going to be a whole bunch of damage to them, which is going to make their lives a lot more difficult, especially if they happen to be these smaller characters who can't take the damage in the first place. But the cool thing about the way this game works is every single player has 8 cards, and these are 8 cards that are specific to your own Ultimate Warrior only, and you're only going to get to use 7 of these cards throughout the entire game. And every one of these cards has different abilities, different special things on them, and they're going to dictate what you're going to do on your turn. So all the players are going to, as a group, they're going to play their card face down, and then in initiative order, based on these cards, players are going to reveal these cards when their initiative comes up, and that becomes their new stats. Now their stats may stay the same, they may keep the same armor class or the difficulty hit, or the difficulty hit can go up or may even go back down, but this is going to give them different things such as ranged attacks, close attacks, and the ability to move around this arena. And this arena is designed to make sure that these Ultimate Warriors are always close to each other and always able to fight each other, keep the joy and the fun of the game going constantly as you play the game. Now, like I said earlier, this game completely dethroned, part of the pun, King of Tokyo, and this is now my go-to game for up to 8 players who want a quick playing game that is not so tactically deep that I can't bring out with non-board gamers, but it's not so light that somebody's going to get bored with it after playing it just a couple times. There's tons of variety. There are tons of warriors in this game. This game plays very well all the way up to its 8-player count, but I find it plays great in the 4 to 5 player range because the game plays so differently depending on if you have the large guys coming out or the smaller guys and how they're interacting and just the tactics all the players are using as they try to become the Ultimate Warrior. Number 44 on the list is Rockwell from Sit Down, a criminally underappreciated game in my honest opinion. This is a game that should have been easily coming close, if not breaking the top 100 games on Board Game Geek. My actual hope is that Magic Maze, another game from Sit Down, that is up for a nomination for the Spiel des Jahres for 2017. I am hoping beyond hope that game actually wins the Spiel des Jahres, so it gives attention to Sit Down, so I hope that this game of Rockwell gets more of the attention that it so rightly deserves. Now, in the game of Rockwell, the players are competing to take over the company, the Rockwell Drilling Company, and there are 4 different people who work for this company, and whoever does the best job is going to take it over from the aging current owner of the business who wants to retire and move out of the business. And the way this game works is players can be drilling down towards the center, trying to get better resources and trying to develop their engine to become the best company and the best future owner of the Rockwell company. Now, the way this game works is every single player has their drilling units that they're going to be using to go out there on this board, but every one of these sections has a certain minimum amount of strength that is required to break through that section, to drill with that section and get the resources that you need from that section of the board. So, for example, if the white player moves to this section that requires at least 3 drilling strength to break into, well, they can move their drilling team in there. They're not going to be able to drill the resources unless they can get another one of the drilling team that equals at least the strength 3 required to break through there. and they get it in there and get the total strength to do that, and then they get to flip that tile over and gain all the resources. But what they have to be careful is that other players can move in, muscle in on the territory, give them the total strength they need, and break through that section of the board. And then now the white player has to share the resources with the other player. But here's the trick, it's not that simple. Players have to develop their mining operations and gain insurance, gain better drilling crews, improve the way the infrastructure of the business works, while working a stock market, while working a worker placement mini game where all these spaces are not always available to them, while they're trying to get certain achievements, and the sooner you get these achievements, the more points they're worth. So this is a whole bunch of mechanics thrown into one game that for some reason just works so fantastically. The players are striving to become the best Rockwell company, future employee to take over the company, working through these mechanics by developing their digging engine and digging towards their future, become the best employees they can be. Now this game is absolutely fantastic in my opinion. It has lots of things that are going to add, make this game play so darn well, from the different things that can happen, from the disasters that can occasionally happen, where players are going to have to hedge their bets, possibly buy insurance, possibly develop their engine here. But the nice thing is there's no set path that you can go down. You need to watch what the other players are doing, react to how the other players are doing, develop your part of the company to the best of your ability to make sure that you can win the game of Rockwell. Number 43 on the list is your chance to tell me I've lost my ever-loving mind, because number 43 on my list is Android, or as I like to refer to it as Blade Runner, the board game. Okay, it's not Blade Runner the board game, it's Android, but trust me, it's Blade Runner the board game. See, in Android, and this is basically my RPG roots, completely showing all their colors and all their glory. Because yes, you can sit there and tell me everything that is wrong with this game, and I will tell you that dozens and dozens of times I have had fantastic stories playing this game. Stories that I will never forget, that just made some fantastic story-driven moments when I was playing Android the game. See, in Android the game, the players are basically investigators with troubled backgrounds, and they're trying to find out who, among all these various criminals, caused one of these crimes. And now, unfortunately, it's the far-flung future of the Blade Runner universe, sorry, the Android universe. And unfortunately, the police don't really care who did something. They just want somebody to have the crime pinned on them so they can move on, so they can keep their job, because the mayor is always breathing down their necks, letting them know that there's not enough money in the budget to waste time trying to figure out who committed a crime. When we have enough evidence, let's throw them in the slammer, keep the citizenry happy, and that is Android the game. See, in this game, players can be investigating all throughout this wonderful world of New Los Angeles, and even traveling into space while they hunt down enough evidence to pin the crime on these various people. I'm sorry, gather evidence to prove that beyond a preponderance of the evidence that they're guilty of these crimes. And the interesting mechanic about this game is all the players have cards that they have in their hand, but the trick is they can't play cards of their own to help themselves unless they play bad cards on the other players. So you have these light cards and you have these dark cards, and the players must play dark cards on the other opponents in an effort to activate their light cards, which creates a very interesting mechanic. And these light cards and these dark cards are thematically very fitting to the theme of the game, because you have the android who's trying to prove just how human she can be. You have the PI who is trying to prove his worth. You have the, I'm sorry, she's not the android, she's the cyborg. I made that mistake, I apologize. Here's the android who's trying to prove just how human can be. And you have the fallen police officer who is just trying to show that he's not as corrupt as the world seems to think he is, but there's some deep storylines going on in this game. It is a very long game. It can play about 4 hours on average, especially when players are first learning how to play the game. And again, it's not a perfect game, but the theme overrides all the warts this game has, making sure that this game has a very, very solid place. That's number 43 on my list of board games. Number 42 is Defenders of the Realm, the game that single-handedly fired Pandemic, at least in my honest opinion. I know those are bold words, but it is very true for myself and everybody in my player group, and I mean everybody in my player group. And I play games with about a dozen different people, except for the meetup. All my personal friends that come over to my house, we will play Defenders of the Realm every single time before we play Pandemic, because that's just how much we love this game. And yes, we are even in the middle of a Pandemic Legacy campaign, and we still want to play Defenders of the Realm. Heck, we just played it on Saturday, and we had a heck of a lot of fun. Now, before I ramble on in a meaningless manner about this, what is Defenders of the Realm? Well, Defenders of the Realm is basically, to put in very simple terms, it is a fantasy version of Pandemic with a lot more thrown in, a lot more bells and whistles, add a lot more to the gameplay. Because you have the simple idea of what you have in Pandemic. You have the diseases, or in this case, the fantasy bad guys who are trying to overrun the land. If you get too many of these diseases, or fantasy bad guys, on the board, they overrun the land, and our heroes have lost in the quest to try to defeat these bad guys. Now, where this game evolves from Pandemic and adds extra mechanics is you have these generals who are slowly marching towards Monarch City at the center of the board. If any one of these generals happen to make it to the center of the board and make it to Monarch City, our heroes have lost. Plus, these horrible bad guys are overrunning this land and trying to corrupt it. If too many corruption crystals get added onto the board, our heroes have lost the game. All of our heroes have hit points, and these hit points are used for actions. As our hit points dwindle away, our heroes lose access to all of our actions. And if a hero loses all of their hit points, they are dead and defeated. The player must grab a new hero card and continue their adventure from the center of Monarch City. This game has quests that the players can go on there to give them extra special abilities, and this game has tons and tons of add-ons to add so much to the variety in the gameplay of the game. You can start the game just with the basic generals that come with the game, and they give you a very good challenge, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Or you can go ahead and pick up the extra generals that come with the game that make the game a lot more difficult. These generals, trust me, they add a lot to the difficulty of the game. You can also get the extra miniatures that replace the basic miniatures that come with the game. The very generic miniatures, you can actually get the special miniatures, which represent all the individual races attacking the world. And all these miniatures have various different difficulties to add much more challenge and make the game even more difficult. And not only that, and this is the part about the game that I like the best, it's not a simple game where you move your hero onto a location, you have a certain amount of actions to destroy the diseases or the fantasy races in this incident. It's not that easy. When you go to a location, you must roll dice, and every one of these bad guys have different abilities, different difficulties, and different challenges in an effort to beat them. So our heroes feel like they're going on a grand quest all across the realm trying to stop these bad guys before any of them manage to make it to the center of the city, Monarch City, and ruin the world. Now, this game is designed by Richard Lanius. He's the same person who did Arkham Horror, and he's a fantastic designer in my opinion. He makes some very thematic games with some very good gameplay, and Defenders of the Realm is no exception to this at all. There's actually a downloadable campaign you can download from Board Game Geek that he put up free of charge, which adds a lot more variety to the game. And like I said, there are tons and tons of add-ons to this game. You can get the extra generals, which add more difficulty. You can get the extra minions that change up the difficulty. And I believe there's 4 different boxes of heroes. So you can take the basic, I think it's 7 heroes that come with the base game, and bring your selection of heroes all the way up to close to 30 different heroes to make sure that you'll never have 2 games of Defenders of the Realm that ever play the same way twice. Defenders of the Realm, yeah, some may just say this is just fantasy Pandemic, but it blows Pandemic out of the water for everybody in my playing group. Defenders of the Realm, number 42 on my list of games that I enjoy. And finally, we come down to number 41, and 41 is Battaglia, the Creation. Now, Battaglia, the Creation is a very interesting game, and it's hard for me to explain the game in 5 minutes or less and still make it all be meaningful, but the best way to describe this game is a deck building, construction, and deconstruction game built in with a war game on a map where every single player controls their army. Well, you have 2 armies only, but these are basically your heroes, and you can use these heroes to go all across the board, wage war against the other players, go on various quests, even going towards the center of the board, again, depending on what kind of scenario you're using, while you're trying to build up your deck and using all these cards, while fighting this wheel, okay, this is all just going to sound like a whole big cluster if I continue explaining it like this, because Battaglia is a whole bunch of mechanics all thrown together into one game that for some reason just works so darn well. This is a very fantastic game. They have taken a very, very well designed deck building game, which in and of itself could have been a very good game. They built it into adding this board where you're continually adding onto this board, and the interesting thing is you're using this board to build on your empire, which is going to allow you to run into the other players. possibly go to war against them and possibly do other things, but you're trying to win the game and get the most victory points by controlling the most cities on the board. And you have to get these cities up to a certain level, so you're basically trying to raise the level of these cities while the other players are attacking your cities, and it's a tug of war as you go back and forth between the players in this game that plays from 2 to 4 players. Now the game has really cool miniatures in it, which is very nice. It has very, very awesome artwork that comes with the game, and there's lots of mechanics that make the game very interesting, plus this wheel that can sometimes adjust the way you're playing your tactics, because it's going to give you various different bonuses during various phases, which may influence the way you're going to act. Add into this fact that there's lots of different scenarios with different center objectives in the center of the board. And remember, all the players start in the corner, so they're working towards each other and towards that center for the extra bonuses. And there's also different things such as neutral NPCs that can come on the board, adding so much to the challenge and so much to the variety of this competitive game between 2 to 4 players that marries so many mechanics that seem so disparate on the surface, but for some reason as you put them together they blend just so perfectly to make my number 41 game, Battaglia. Hope you're enjoying the list so far. We've covered 51 all the way to 41. Next week we're going to go from 40 all the way down to 31. And don't forget, after we're done with this entire list, I'm going to put up my boys, both their top 11 games of all time. It's kind of cool to see how their lists are similar to mine, but also how they're different from mine, and actually how they're very similar to each other in some aspects, but in some aspects are quite different. Also, don't forget, I'm going to try to do a little bit of a self-analysis after all this is over, which is, I think, going to create some really interesting feedback. And I hope you all enjoy me and making some comments and join me in the feedback on that. And also, don't hesitate to leave comments on these videos down below as this list goes up. My goal is to put up one of these lists every single week until we are completely finished. So leave some comments down below. And as always, if you feel free, or if you want to, you can also feel free to email me if you have any more questions at Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. If you enjoy this video content and you want to help support the channel, think about tossing $1 over in the tip jar over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/otsbgr. If you enjoy this video, if you enjoy this video series and you enjoy this channel, click that like button, click that subscribe button, because your likes and subscriptions do matter. Thanks for watching.